The term cloud refers to a network or an internet. Cloud computing gives us a means to access applications as utilities over the internet. We're able to create, configure, and customize applications online. And cloud computing is when we perform manipulating, configuring, or even accessing applications online. It allows for data storage, application, and infrastructure. There are many benefits to cloud computing, which is a reason for its rapid advance today in technology. Let's talk about some of the benefits and some of the risks of cloud computing. We'll begin with the benefits. And these include you can always access applications as a utility over the internet. Another benefit is cloud computing uses load balancing, which makes it more reliable. Cloud computing is more cost effective because it operates at a high efficiency with great utilization, and it only requires an internet connection. Another benefit is that resources are always available on demand. They're 24/7 and ready to go. Another benefit is you can use online development and deployment tools. And finally, you don't need any kind of specific pieces of software to access cloud-based applications. So on the right here, we'll look at some of the risk. There's always pros and cons of everything, but some of the risks for cloud computing include security and privacy. It's always a concern with data management and infrastructure management. But when using cloud computing, the service provider is a third party who actually provides the infrastructure management, and you have somewhat of a risk when you're allowing them to access your sensitive information. Another risk is you run the risk of insecure or incomplete data deletion because sometimes the data doesn't always get deleted. And that happens when extra copies are stored somewhere and not available to the disk. And often this disk stores data for other users too. So you think data got deleted, but it might not always be deleted. Another risk is you run the risk of management interface compromise. And a management interface compromise is caused because sometimes the interfaces are inaccessible through an internet. Some kind of a connection or a piece of equipment isn't always available. So those are your interface components, and sometimes that causes you a little bit of difficulty. Another risk you run is the risk of vendor lock-in. This is because once you've chosen a cloud service provider, you become dependent on them because it's very difficult to change your data over to a different service provider. And then finally, you run the risk of isolation failure because on occasion, the device designed to isolate storage or memory or routing to a different user fails. Let's talk about some of the different deployment models. The deployment model determines or defines the type of access to cloud and where it's located, and these include public, private, hybrid, and community. The public cloud allows access to the general public and may be less secure to a degree. The private cloud are accessible within an organization and offers a greater degree of security because it's usually private. The community cloud allows access to a group of organizations or a collection of private clouds. And then finally, the hybrid cloud mixes both the public and the private clouds, where the critical activities are performed using the private cloud, and then the non-critical activities are performed using the public cloud. So the name of the cloud defines the type of access of the cloud and also where it's located. You can have either deployment models or service models. Deployment models define the type of access to the cloud and where it's located. Service models are the reference models where the cloud computing is based, and these can be infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, or software as a service. In the three different types of service models, infrastructure, it actually provides access to fundamental resources like physical machines, virtual machines, or a virtual storage. When we look at the platform service model, it actually provides the runtime environment for applications and development and activities for deployment tools. And then finally, software actually uses or lets the user use software as a service type of model. So you've got infrastructure, platform, and software. I have a slide for you here which shows the 4 key characteristics of cloud computing. So if you look at the upper portion with the pictures of the clouds, it shows the deployment models, which include hybrid cloud, private cloud, public cloud, and community cloud. The next section down is the blue and shows the service models, which include software as a service, platform as a service, and infrastructure as a service. The next section is red and shows cloud characteristics, which include the specific characteristics that are necessary in a cloud, such as demand on service, network access, resource pooling, measured services, and rapid elasticity. So you want to be able to quantify your work sometimes and also be able to have flexibility. And then the lower bottom section of the screen that has the yellow square shows the common characteristics, which include large-scale public cloud, the ability to have resiliency, the ability to focus on your services and how they're oriented, a layer of security, the ability to provide services at a low cost, and then the common homogeneity of the support mechanisms like software and hardware, and then the ability to have wide geographic distribution. And finally, the ability to provide virtualization. So together, these form the deployment, the service, and the characteristics of cloud services. Planning is important as you develop virtual networks because there are a number of things considered as you develop business requirements. You need to think about data and privacy requirements, how much you want to spend in your budget, the type of cloud that you need, whether it's going to be public, private, or hybrid. Then you have to look at what kind of training requirements will you have and what kind of data backup requirements will you have and what's going to be needed as far as your legal and desired requirements as far as security and data backups. There can be significant requirements based on whether you're a private sector company or a federal entity as far as protection of your data. You have to also know what kind of dashboards you need and what kind of access requirements you're going to have. So even though you have all these things, you might need to export data and have different requirements for that. There's so many different requirements that you have to look at in planning to make sure you get it right. So you want to look at these parameters and plan out your system on paper and develop the best system that you can to meet your needs as far as your cloud system. When we're looking at this and building a strategy, basically you have a strategy phase, a planning phase, and a deployment phase. So in the strategy phase, you want to look at the value proposition or what kind of strategy you think you need for a business. In the planning phase, you actually have to look at the business architecture, the IT architecture, and what type of quality needs you need built within the system. Then in the deployment phase, you take what you have there and figure out what kind of cloud provider you want to use or what kind of vendor is going to support your cloud based on your requirement and your strategy that you've developed. When you're looking at your value proposition, there are many factors you want to look at, such as the simplification of operations, cost reduction, the application or the ability to have innovation or offer innovative services, and what type of quality you want is the end result. Once you have your value proposition complete, you want to look at a cloud computing strategy which is based on your analysis from the value proposition. This is based off a strategy document and used to develop the conditions you might face while you're actually using the cloud. And you want to look at failure points and backlogs and ways to back up data and things like that, so you've got that all included. Basically your disaster recovery. And I usually, when I'm planning for a cloud, try to look at the worst case scenario and what I want that to look like should anything happen. Some of the key components of the planning phase include performing an analysis of the problem and the risk of the cloud application to ensure where you successfully meet your business goals. And what this is going to include is your business architecture development. This is where you look at the risk of your cloud in terms of your client and your client's business. You want to look at your architecture development, and that's where you identify the applications to support each business process and the technology that's going to be needed to support the enterprise applications and the data systems. Then you look at your quality of service developments, and this is where you want to look at things like reliability or disaster recovery and security functions. And finally, you want to transform this plan into what I call the transformation plan development, where you actually transform the current business model into actual cloud computing. So you want to take the modern components and the aged components that they have on paper and transform those into a modern cloud computing environment. And last but not least, you will initiate the deployment phase for your cloud, where you determine which cloud computing provider you will use and how you will perform maintenance and technical service in the future. There are a number of technologies that work behind the scenes with the cloud in order to make it flexible, reliable, and usable. And these include virtualization, service-oriented architecture, grid computing, and utility computing. So let's begin with virtualization. Virtualization is a technique that allows a single source of an instance or an application or a resource to be used among many organizations or customers. It assigns a logical name to a physical resource and points the system to that resource when it's demanded. Service-oriented architecture uses applications as a service to exchange data between applications and vendors without needing to make changes or perform additional programming. The next technology is grid computing. In grid computing, you have a number of geographically dispersed computers which are connected to achieve one common objective. And then in utility computing, you have a pay-per-use model, which performs things like computational resources on demand as a metered service. Cloud computing architecture is built from many cloud components. These are generally separated into front end and back end. Both of these ends are connected through a network like the internet. The front end consists of interfaces and applications that are required to access cloud computing platforms, such as your web browser. The back end part of the cloud computing architecture is the cloud itself, and this part contains all the resources required to produce cloud services. This includes data storage, data models, security mechanisms, services, and virtual machines. The back end is responsible for all of the security and the communications needs of the system. The cloud computing infrastructure is built based on the network architecture and includes things like the network, management software, storage, your servers, and platform virtualization. You have a virtual machine manager called a hypervisor, which allows sharing a single instance of a cloud resource between several users. Within the infrastructure, you have management of software and deployment of the software. Management of software maintains and configures the infrastructure. The deployment of the software integrates applications on the cloud. Other crucial components include the network, server, and storage. The network is a key component of cloud infrastructure. It allows the cloud to connect services over the network. The server helps for computation of resource services and other services and provides resource allocation while monitoring any system issues. Then storage comes into play. The cloud uses a distributed file system for storage. That way, if one resource fails, the data can be extracted from another one, allowing it to provide a high degree of reliability. Let's talk now about the 4 types of cloud models. We already discussed that you have public, private, hybrid, and community cloud models. Each of these performs a different application based on the user's needs. The public cloud model allows services to be accessed by the general public, things like Microsoft, Amazon, and Google. There are many benefits related to the public cloud, which include a high level of scalability, flexibility, cost-effectiveness, and reliability. Some of the disadvantages are a low level of security and the fact that it's less customizable. The private cloud model allows systems and services to be accessed within a single organization. The benefits to the private cloud model include a higher level of security and privacy. The user has more control and more efficiency than a public cloud. Some of the disadvantages are that it's only accessible locally and difficult to deploy globally. Oftentimes, purchasing new hardware is very costly, and you have a very limited amount of scalability. In a hybrid cloud model, you have a mixture of public and private clouds. Many of the non-critical activities are performed using a public cloud, while the critical activities are performed using the private cloud. Some of the benefits of the hybrid cloud model include scalability, flexibility, cost efficiency, and security. Some of the disadvantages include a number of networking issues because the complexities of working between a public and a private cloud and ensuring the cloud services are compliant with organization security policies. The community cloud model allows services to be accessed by a group of organizations and shares infrastructure. There are a number of benefits to doing so, which include cost effectiveness and security. One limitation is that since all the data is housed in one location, you have to be careful in how you store the data in the community cloud because it can be accessed by others. It's also challenging to allocate governance and security. Virtualization allows you to share a single physical instance of an application among many users or organizations. It does this by assigning a logical name to a physical resource and providing a pointer to the resource when it's needed. Virtualization uses a hypervisor, which is a firmware that acts as a virtual machine manager. You have a host machine and virtual machines. The virtual machine is managed by a software firmware called the hypervisor, and the virtualization is important because it eliminates the need for modifications to run software and helps to isolate a number of the domains. Security is always a major concern for information technology professionals. All of the data in the cloud should be stored in an encrypted form. It's important to restrict clients from direct access of shared data and to use proxy and brokerage services. When planning security for a cloud computing network using the CompTIA A+ certified professional, you should always analyze several aspects about resources, which include determining which resources need to move to a cloud, analyzing risk, and determining which service models, such as software as a service, platform as a service, or infrastructure as a service. Then you have to look at determining which cloud service model to use, which cloud types, such as the public, private, hybrid, or community. The next consideration you may have to do is how data is going to be transferred or where it's stored and how it should be moved in and out of the cloud. The important components to remember about cloud security are encryption, auditing, authentication, and authorization. And encryption helps the data from being compromised and protects it while it's being transferred or stored in the cloud. Access has to be controlled using auditing, authentication, and authorizing techniques, which will be discussed a lot more in our security chapter. The Cloud Security Alliance model can be used to define the boundaries between each service model, and this is important because it reduces a major security risk within cloud deployments, and it really depends on the types of service models and the cloud types. Further layers of security for cloud computing are beyond the scope of the A+ certification examination, but I will review a number of security principles in our Security Fundamentals chapter. This demonstration, I'm going to show you some information about cloud computing. Cloud computing is very popular today as a storage means to store extremely large files that users use this day and age, like a number of pictures and video files and things like that, and occasionally extremely large documents. But cloud computing allows us to share information with people a little bit easier because we can share them from the cloud at our computer. We can use the cloud at different locations. We can use it from a mobile device or we can use it from our desktop, but basically it helps with being on the go. So I've typed in cloud down in the start engine here. If I put that on my computer and it's connected to Windows 10 and I've already set up a OneDrive app, this is cloud-based. If I click this button, it will take me instantly to my OneDrive. And you can see by the cloud right here, that this is the status and what things are in the cloud. So I've got documents that are in the cloud. I've got some email attachments and music and things like that. I don't have my pictures per se in the cloud, but I can put anything in the cloud that I'd like. So let me show you how I got from point A to point B and how you really register and get this set up. So obviously this is a Microsoft product. It's set up through Windows 10. Shows my computer connecting to the cloud, and here's all my documents out there. So I'd have to start by entering my email address, and that's how I begin or how I sign into the Microsoft OneDrive. From there, I have to enter my password. So I've entered my password through my email, and I've gotten signed in. Then it takes me to the setup section. So this is my OneDrive folder. It's going to show me where these will actually be on the computer and lets me know a little bit of information. So it's actually putting it on my hard drive in a users folder called RK6 and then my OneDrive folder. From there, it says welcome to OneDrive, and it lets me have a little bit of information and shows you some video tutorials on actually how you use the products available. Tells me about the ability to have all of my files online, available on this device and other devices. So I have a little bit of setup options that I can use. It tells me about the ability to share files and folders to let other people view or edit, or I can even share them. And I'll talk about another means you can do this after we talk about the OneDrive. Going from there shows the mobility. I mentioned earlier you can use this on a phone, so you can use it on any type of phone or tablet. You can get your files anywhere out of the cloud. So I can be at work, I can be at home, I could be at school, or I could be at a ball game and be able to access anything that's stored on the drive. So I set this up. It says I'm good to go, and I can open my OneDrive folder. When I click there, it takes me to the specific folders, and you can see this cloud symbol. So these are where these particular documents are stored. So it gives you a lot of additional storage. Depends on the company and the brand as far as how much storage they'll provide you per month. So you've got a couple of different options. I know you've probably heard of Amazon. So we've got the Amazon Drive, and you can back up your photos and videos there. It gives a number of different options as far as web-based and your mobile devices and your desktop. You can connect those all together. And then they've got a number of different types of plans. So sometimes you get a free plan. Sometimes you get cost per use or per upload plan. But what you notice here is just the basic size of things. 100 gig of storage for $12 a year. That's substantial. I mean, that's cheaper than you going out and buying an external hard drive. So that's a really good deal. $59 for 1 terabyte. You know, if you went out to buy an external drive that was 1 terabyte, you'd probably spend $60. So that's how you set that up. It's pretty neat, and there's a couple of different options. You know, I've showed you OneDrive, you've got the Amazon Drive, and you've got the Google Drive. So I've actually used Google Drive with a few colleagues at work. The good thing is we're all working on a PowerPoint presentation together in a Word document, and we've all got it on our screen at the same time, and we're doing some edits, and it really tells you instantly who's editing that file, which is pretty handy because you can know who's typing and who's working on the document. But it makes it easier to collaborate, and that's one of the goals of using cloud type of setups and networks, is because you can share things a lot easier than we ever could. So it's really good for things on the go. So this is the Google Drive. You can store any type of file or photo or drawings, and they give you a basic account with 15 gigabyte of memory. You can, like I said, mentioned earlier, you can use any kind of a tablet or you can use a phone. You can share your files and folders. You can get started with it for free, and then if you want to upgrade because you need more than 15 gig, you can do that. So it's very easy. You know, you've got the Microsoft Drive, the OneDrive, you've got Amazon Drive, you've got Google Drive. So there are so many different cloud companies out there, and I've got a presentation that follows this, and I'll do some discussion on the different types of drive companies and things like that. And there's really, you know, about 150, 200 different companies that offer you cloud drive storage. So it's a really focused business based, and you can think about it, you know, that's really a significant amount of storage for us worldwide. Well, thank you for joining me for this video. In this video demonstration, I'm going to talk some more about cloud computing. Cloud computing is a very important part of what we do as far as technology moving forward. If you remember from our lecture, the term cloud means basically a network or an internet. And we've been using some of the basic principles about cloud computing since around the 1950s. And it's evolved over time with increasing number of support services and support capabilities worldwide. So basically the cloud gives us a number of opportunities, mainly the fact that data and services can be accessed from anywhere. And we gain a huge economy of scale because it lowers the expense for many companies and many individuals. So they no longer need things like expensive software or servers, and users really don't have to have any kind of understanding about the particular infrastructure or the platform that it's on. There is some concern that businesses will become at some point so reliable on the cloud that it'll begin to limit the flexibility and innovation. And with the ever increasing number of security issues, security within information technology, the cloud will prove to be a great challenge as far as going forward. So you might be needed and asked by your users to help them determine the best service provider and how to access cloud storage on their computer. So if you remember from our lecture, we showed pictures of some of the different basic companies that provide services, and I think we showed you Google Drive and OneDrive, and then even Amazon. So those are three large ones. There's virtually hundreds of companies that offer some variety of cloud storage, and you can put anything on your cloud storage. We're talking music, talking audio, video. You can protect your home. You can keep any kind of different ideas on there. You can access those from different platforms like your phone. You can work on video games, connect with other individuals through social media. So there are a number of applications you can use it for, and a number of companies that you can use to access it. And you're going to notice just as you buy a lot of products these days, this just happens to be the outside of a particular Apple box, and it says iCloud. So I notice this a lot when I'm looking at products on the shelf, and when you're looking at technology products, you're going to see a cloud on there, and that indicates that the product is usable on the cloud and has easy access and support already loaded into the software. And ideally, whatever your storage devices are, whether it's a phone, whether it's a tablet, or whether it's any kind of a pad, you'll be able to easily connect that with whatever version of the manufacturer's cloud is out there. So related to clouds and information like that, there's a lot of different collaborative efforts and collaborative movements that you can do. I wanted to show you one thing, particularly like Google's Cloud Print. So you can print from virtually anywhere. I mean, if I can go to work and I can print a document on my phone that I need and have it show up at a particular printer or have it show up at a print shop, that's amazing, phenomenal technology. I mean, you couldn't do that back in the day if you were late for a presentation and you totally forgot a document that was really important. Now you could send that virtually from a device to a cloud print, or you could print it to a local printing service, and they simply print it off just by using cloud technology. And the main thing that's really important about networking and the use of the cloud is things like collaboration. So I just found one advertisement I wanted to show you, and this is built by Adobe, but really it's built for students, whether they're in high school or college or middle school or elementary school, goes K through 12, just to be collaborative in a creative cloud. So they can work on design, they can do photography, they can do video, so much more than we ever used to be able to do in the younger day when I think we were all children. So that's really adding to the collaborative nature of everyone in the world. I don't know if you might have possibly seen, I know everybody's heard of the boxer Rocky, and in one of the recent movies, Rocky is, if you remember his son, or when Rocky fought an individual, his name was Apollo Creed. Well, now his son is into fighting, so I got a kick out of watching the movie. And when his son was practicing, he wanted to grow up and be a good fighter like his dad. And Rocky had given him a paper list of all the exercises that you would do and things you would do for a practice regimen if you're a boxer. And while he was doing that, the boy took the list of training, simply took a picture of it and handed him the list back, and he said, "What's the matter? You don't want to learn how to train to be a great boxer?" And he said, "I've got it. It's in the cloud." So I thought that was pretty cool technology, and what the younger crowd is used to and what we've got to get used to and embrace as far as technology going forward. So basically, when I talked about cloud computing and setting up networks, what it really is just a shared pool of configurable computing resources. So you've got a computer network, you've got a system of servers, you've got storage, and then you've got a number of applications, whether it's software. You could have a lot of different application types of things that are mathematical computations or things you could use for finance or anything like that. But this important part is it's really a big system. Everything's available on demand as far as network access, and then you get access to these different services and applications and storage areas and servers based on your provisioning by whatever service provider that you or your customer happens to use. So that's the basics of kind of how cloud computing works. I want to share another thing with you. Talk real quick about the deployment models. I know we talked about this tiny bit in the lecture, but I wanted to talk about, some of the important concepts of that. So your 4 deployment models, if you remember, were the public, and that's the general public. As far as having systems where they're easily accessible, where anyone can use them, things like email and email services. Then you've got your private cloud. All right. Then you've got your community. And then you've got a hybrid. So in your private cloud, the private cloud really has systems that are accessible basically to something smaller, like an organization or a company or a business. And then your community cloud, that's a little bit larger. That could be like a group of companies or a group of businesses or a group of organizations that have a specific cloud model just set up for them. And then you've got your hybrid, and hybrid is basically a grouping of the public and the private types of entities. And these are things that are non-critical activities, but they can be used for, the combination of the two, providing the best parts of public ability and private ability. So sometimes you've got a hybrid, and you gain a little bit of efficiency there. So I wanted to talk a little bit about cloud taxonomy on this side. And basically what that tells you is the different types or services that you've got. So under infrastructure, you've got things like your ability to do storage, and those are your big companies like Amazon. And then you've got the ability to do custom computing, and there's several companies that do that, like Flexiscale or Terramark. And then you've got your services management, and services can be any number of specific provisioning things that you give people, like I mentioned earlier, the accounting or human resources or things like that. So they've got companies like Scare, Elastic, and Dynac that provide specific services. Then you've got your cloud software. And your cloud software is really broken down into about 3 particular structures. You've got data, and then you've got file storage, and then you've got cloud management. So data is really produced or worked on with companies that are used to managing huge databases, and that's things like Oracle, or you might have heard of Apache or Terracotta. So those are big systems that provide really data software, analysis, analytics, and biometrics, things like that. Then you've got the file storage, and file storage is really important because everyone that works on the cloud needs a large-scaled place that they can store things. So there are companies that work just specifically with software on file storage. Then you've got your cloud management, and cloud management really provides all the operational components of what you need to have a cloud set up, and things like that would be like Eucalyptus or Apistry or companies like that really just provide all of the infrastructure you need, like VPN and things like that, to put a software network together. Then you've got platform services. And platform services are just a collection of things that what does a business really want? Do they want business intelligence? Do they want testing and development? Do they want some kind of general purpose applications? They might need help with development and testing or integration. So those are really business design type of things as far as how a platform is set up. And then you've got, other than your cloud, I want to call that cloud software. Then you've got really people that focus specifically on just software application. So you've got cloud software, and then you've got software related to specific entities like human resources, social media, financial or backing up of data, document management, and software management. So two different differentiations there on the software. So that's basically your cloud taxonomy and what you can do with things as far as infrastructure, software, platform, or software. Next thing I wanted to show you was just go over the characteristics. And we talked somewhat about the characteristics in our lecture, but it's important to understand how these really piece together. What type of cloud are people going to have? So your overall arching of what could be a combination of these would be your hybrid. Included with that, you've got your private, then you've got your community, you've got your public. So these can all combine. That's your 4 deployment models. Either you've got one or the other, private, community, or public, or you've got a combination of the private and public, which form the hybrid. Then you've got your specific service models. There are 3 specific types, and based on those, you've got infrastructure, and infrastructure really helps provide access to fundamental resources. These are like physical machines or virtual storage. These kind of provide you platforms and the runtime environment, things like that, and applications of development and some of your deployment tools. So that's very important. So let me talk about software as a service. You got your platform, and you've got your infrastructure. All right, so we've talked about platform. I want to talk a little bit about software. Let me start with software next. We've talked about our infrastructure. You've got your platform and you've got your software. So within your infrastructure, that's basically everything that pulls it together and puts it together. These are more so the physical parts. So what company or what do you need as far as service? And then you've got your software company. So software are things that allow users to have software as a service. What type of application do I need? Do I need computational things? Do I work in a research company? Do I need some kind of a logistics tracking, like say you owned a company that was similar, doing deliveries like Amazon or just other large companies like Alibaba, things like that. What kind of software do they need for that? So it's really important to have the areas there. Do you want to be offered a platform or the particular infrastructure or the software? Those are your 3 service models and the availability of things that you can offer people. So under that, you've got, once you know what type of service you need for your company, there's specific essential characteristics. And the essential characteristics are basically things that you would expect every cloud or every service type of company to offer. And these are basically on-demand services. So you've got your on-demand services. Then you've got what you would expect or the availability to have between all of your cloud services are some kind of resource pooling. So you've got your resources. Then you've got your network access. So access is key. And how you get to that. You expect a lot of elasticity, like how fast and how flexible is the system. And then your measured service. So how are you going to meter or how are you going to pay for this? Are you going to buy it by the terabyte? Are you going to buy it by the bit? How often do things happen? So those are 4 common components or essential characteristics of what would you expect with a cloud type service. Then you've got a lot of common characteristics and the things that are really common to every type of cloud system after you've got the overall basic structure to put it together are things like massive scale. They're all going to be very large. They're going to be able to carry things like huge terabytes of data, which is phenomenal. Back in the day, we looked at gigs and we're excited, and then we talked about terabytes, and even things like terabytes are phenomenally changing because they've got larger, more cost-effective pieces of data. So those are the kind of things that we want to look at. There's a lot of different types of software that we can look at for growing or improving businesses. And other things we want to look at are like homogeneity rather, and virtualization, and then your cost. All of the types of clouds are very resilient. They're also service oriented. We've got security, And then we've also got an extreme geographic capability. So wherever you're at in the world, whether it's in a foreign country or whether it's here in the United States, it doesn't matter where it is, you'll have a different geographic capability. So that's basically your characteristics. I wanted to go over a couple of things about some of the advantages and disadvantages of cloud systems. So I explained a little bit about how cloud models are set up, what the deployment models look like, what the cloud taxonomy is, and what some of the common characteristics are. What I want to talk now is about just some of the advantages and disadvantages as far as cloud computing. So the main thing is you want to start with is it's very cost effective. It's cost effective because you don't need a lot of high powered or high priced computers as far as using the web-based applications. And then you don't need a significant amount of processing power or memory. So that's important. Next thing you can look at is the reduced cost of software. That can be significant. It's very important that customers save money, and you don't have to buy a lot of software to use the web. It's always web-based, and the software is right there. Another thing is you don't have to worry about the software updates. You don't have to have software, but you don't have to worry about any kind of updating or time that you spend doing that if you owned the cloud or the network yourself. There's really minimal formatting capabilities. And compatibility. And that's really important because everything comes from the same cloud. So basically, if we're all on Google Drive and we're all working on like a PowerPoint or are all working on a Word document, we don't have to worry about having several different versions or several different formats or having issues with one compatibility on one system or one on another. We're all using the same thing. So those are some pretty good bonuses. One thing I want to talk about was some of the size. In the last video, I was talking about gigabytes and terabytes, but really now for some of the cloud services, you can get what's called a petabyte. And a petabyte is actually 1,000 terabytes. I mean, that's phenomenal capacity compared to anything we've ever had, historically as far as the IT field. You've got another advantage like increased data reliability. So your reliability is good. And that's important because all of your information is stored in the cloud. In case your hard drive ever crashes, you've basically got that information in the cloud. That's really important. You've also got universal document access because all of your documents are right there on the cloud. So I can log in on my phone or I can log in on a tablet or my desktop and I've got it. The main thing and the key value I think that the clouds have are easier collaboration. Within easier collaboration, you've also got to think about your portability. So like I mentioned, I can take this anywhere on a tablet or I can take it on a phone or my laptop or any kind of computer, any location and be able to work with the cloud. So you do have a few disadvantages. You always have to have an internet connection, and that's important, and a lot of people consider that a definite disadvantage. If you don't have Wi-Fi or access to it, basically you don't have access to the cloud. And then the cloud doesn't work well with a lot of low internet speeds, so even if you have access to the internet, if you got low speed, you're going to get a bit of difficulty with some of the web pages and some of the web links. And then cloud servers are backed up every day. So if you've got a cloud application and it's a day where the internet's very heavy, you may not have instantaneous access for some of your application. So that's a downfall. All right, so we've got a few there. There's always going to be, I'm thinking, security concerns. That's another aspect. We've mentioned in some of our discussions, no matter what information technology field you're in, there's always security concerns or worries that someone might access data or some kind of a breach like that. The other thing is you don't really have a backup. So that can be a bit of a concern, you would assume, and that could be a little bit falsely. Theoretically, all your information is backed up on several machines, but you don't have any single copy of that on your drive or any physical backup on a local drive. So that could be a concern. And the one other thing is as far as your cloud protocols. So sometimes when you're using cloud protocols, they might be a little bit different. Like Amazon set up its own creative workflow system for their customers. So other companies have to adapt to that. And so if you're working with different companies that have really specialized or want to sell their particular product, sometimes you run into a little bit of adaptability for that. But it's not that common. I think you can see, just looking at the left and the right here, the advantages, I think, far outweigh the disadvantages as far as IT professionals and what we do. So part of your work as a CompTIA A+ certified professional will be helping people choose the companies that they want to use as providers, helping them determine how much memory they need based on their usage, and how to actually boot up or get the software going or network into the cloud. So that's our primary duties there. So I appreciate you joining me on this cloud demonstration.